Photosynthesis and cellular respiration are two naturally occurring processes in organisms that helps convert energy from the food they eat. The first process we're going to talk about is photosynthesis. Photosynthesis is the process by which photosynthetic autotrophs, or organisms that automatically make their own food, convert light energy from the sun into chemical energy of sugar, also known as our glucose C6H12O6. This occurs in chloroplasts, which is the organelle found only in plant cells because it is the site where photosynthesis takes place. The equation for the process of photosynthesis is as follows. You need sunlight, carbon dioxide, which is CO2, and water, which is H2O. These are called our reactants. Anything on the left-hand side of the arrow is our reactants. So these three reactants join together, they carry out the process of photosynthesis, which is this arrow, and then the products we get, the end result, is our glucose sugar, C6H12O6, and oxygen. An increase in temperature, amount of light, we will see in a second that the reactants in photosynthesis end up becoming the products in cellular respiration. This is an important thing to note. Also, in photosynthesis, any increase in temperature, amount of light, or amount of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere will cause an increase in the rate of photosynthesis. So any one of these three factors increases, it gets hotter, we get more sunlight available, or there is an increase in the amount of carbon dioxide in our atmosphere. It will cause a severe increase in the rate of photosynthesis. ATP, or our energy source, is present in the process of photosynthesis with our sunlight. So our sunlight converting into chemical energy is where ATP would be present in this process. Moving on to cellular respiration. Cellular respiration is a process that involves the breaking of those chemical bonds that we get from eating our food and glucose to form that ATP energy. So heterotrophs and autotrophs both carry out this process of cellular respiration, meaning animals and plants. The organelle in the cell that it occurs in is our mitochondria, our powerhouse of the cell. Autotrophs and heterotrophs both have a mitochondria. Now, the chemical equation for the process of cellular respiration is as follows. We have our reactants, our glucose and our oxygen. If you remember, these were our products from photosynthesis. They now become our reactants for cellular respiration. So we are living, we have consumed food. That is where this glucose comes from. You must breathe in oxygen. So we breathe in that oxygen. We carry out the process of cellular respiration, which is represented by the arrow, and the products that we get when you breathe out. You make carbon dioxide, CO2. You breathe out water droplets, H2O, and you are releasing that ATP energy. There are two types of respiration. First, we have anaerobic, meaning no oxygen is present whatsoever. And second, we have aerobic respiration, which requires oxygen. So, aerobic respiration is what is occurring in our mitochondria. It needs oxygen, which as you see in our equation, we need oxygen to carry out that aerobic cellular respiration. However, for anaerobic, no oxygen is present. So this is going to take place in our cytoplasm, in the jelly of the cell. And what happens here, you have two different types. We can have fermentation, or we have lactic acid fermentation. Now, fermentation occurs in plants and in yeasts, all right, which is a type of fungi. An example of this would be bread rising due to that carbon dioxide being released in the yeast. This is also how alcoholic beverage, blah, 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 blah. However, in anaerobic respiration, no oxygen is present. Again, this takes place in the cytoplasm of all cells, or in the jelly, all right? And there are two main types of anaerobic, or no oxygen present, respiration. First, we have fermentation and lactic acid fermentation. Regular fermentation occurs in plants and yeast, which are a type of fungi that we've already talked about. An example of this would be the bread rising due to carbon dioxide being released in that dough through the yeast. All right, so fermentation is just when there is no oxygen present, your body is still able to carry out and make small bursts of energy, ATP, using no oxygen. All right, but it can't do a lot of it. Another example of this is lactic acid fermentation. So this occurs in your muscle cells. So when you're working out, all right, your muscles have oxygen in them. But as you start to work out a lot and get fatigued, okay, you're using up all the oxygen in your muscles. It's becoming harder. Your muscles are starting to get sore. You have a buildup of this lactic acid, all right, that makes your muscles sore. And that happens because you are burning through the oxygen in your muscles quicker than your body can replenish it as you're trying to breathe during your workout. So your muscles go into panic mode and they are able to release short bursts of ATP through this lactic acid fermentation anaerobic process. All right, so they can make short bursts of energy to get you to keep going, but it doesn't last for long. That's why you get fatigued, and that's why your muscles hurt the next day, because you have so much of this acid built up in your muscles, and usually you have to stretch it out or use a foam roller nowadays to release and break up all of that acid and to get oxygen back into your muscles. All right, so remember, aerobic respiration requires that oxygen, happens in the mitochondria. This is represented by the process of cellular respiration that we know. Anaerobic respiration, no oxygen is present. This is your body's way of doing fight or flight. It's going to use what is available to try and make those short bursts of ATP either through fermentation or lactic acid fermentation. All right.